Hello, and welcome back to part 14 of modeling a Mustang. Again, I know it's been another kind of long break between the last video, just quite a busy week, or busy couple of weeks. So in this episode, I want to add the rear window to the Mustang. So I'm going to go about it in a pretty identical fashion to the front window and the side windows, but the difference in this episode is the way I fixed the problem. So with the front window, I changed the sketch. With the rear window, I'm actually going to change the body, so it might be worth sticking around to watch this one. So firstly, what I want to do is I want to create a plane. I'm just checking through kind of the feature, not the feature tree, the browser on the left-hand side to see if there's a plane I've already created. What I'm looking for is a plane that's on the front to back kind of line but offset. So I had a quick look, couldn't find one. So they're easily made. So you just go up to into construct, offset plane, then find the plane that's parallel with where you want your plane, and then drag it out to wherever you want. You can set a certain distance, but I didn't need a certain distance, so I just wanted to create a plane that's outside of the car. It's not necessary. I could have just drawn it on one of the planes on the origin, but I always find it a bit easier just to find the sketch when it's outside the model. But anyway, so there are a few ways you can do this. You could do this with a fit point spline. I've opted to just use arcs. For me, this sketch, it's not. The shapes are quite easily done through arcs. They're not too complex. So I just decided that 3-point arcs were the best way to go. Depends on the car you do though. On other cars in the past, I've opted for fit point splines, or on something with a really straight rear window, I've just used straight lines. But yeah, so that's why I wanted to do that. So just dragging that up to there. I like the 3-point arc tool. It's a very simple tool. Like there's not much that can go wrong with it. Right. So here, now that I've got the sketch on the left, rather than drawing the whole thing, it's easier to just mirror it. It guarantees it's going to be symmetrical. So it's just easier that way. But you can draw like a full size one if you use the constraints. So you'll notice in the bottom right, I've got an error. That's actually, if I hover over those the dots at the bottom, the points at the bottom and top of that sketch, I noticed that they're not actually linking. So I decided to undo it and retry again. I didn't mean to rotate around the car. So there we go. Back here before the mirror. So with those I'm gonna try that again. I get the same error. And here's where the actual error is. You see how those points are dragging apart? That shouldn't happen. So I didn't realize that, but what that basically means is the mirror line isn't perfectly aligned. That was my fault. It's so minute. Like even if this car was produced in real scale, I wouldn't be able to notice the width of the line. They're almost like perfectly aligned. So, but what was basically happened was some overlapping lines and ones that didn't quite meet up. So again, I'm gonna undo because I'm trying to solve this problem. And it's better to just solve the problems as soon as possible rather than ignoring them. I also didn't like these corners. I didn't feel like these corners were right, so I wanted to redo them. Same tool, the Shift Arc tool. You'll notice this time they have a dash to them. That's just because the construction geometry is active. So what I go to here is I try to dimension this point. I mean, if you just don't do that. So on the right hand side in this video, but it'll be on the top for you, are the constraints. And what you can use is the tangent constraint. So if you make that arc a tangent to the lines to the right of it and to the and above it, it'll make a more natural curve rather than trying to drag it out. Yeah. There we go. I've accidentally selected the whole thing. So I drew these as constraints, only because I left the constraint tool on from when I was drawing the mirror line. That constraint tool is toggled on in that right hand panel. It's easily fixed if you just select the lines that have dashes and then toggle the construction tool off. So there we go. And now I've mirrored it across, and again I can see that that there's still something not quite right. So easy way to tell that the sketch isn't working is if you look at it, there's no orange background. There is now. So I use those two lines. You can just drag them randomly and it will help you kind of troubleshoot where there are gaps in your profile. So if there were no gaps in the profile, this whole window would be orange. But as you can see at the bottom and the top, they are not linked. And what I should have done is use the coincident tool. So what you can do is just click each point, hold shift to select the two, and then click coincident and they'll link up. Instead, I just drew a line between them, and this is because I just wasn't using that tool that much at the time, and I don't know, like I said before, like when you're at the computer, as long as I was, you just don't think that straight. So now extruding onto the car, same as before, clicking the car body as the surface as the start point, and then extruding. And because I've extruded everything else about 10 millimeters, well, exactly 10 millimeters, I'm going to do the same here to make it all look a lot more similar. So with the sketch on the front, I had the problem of where the windshield kind of curved awkwardly around the front pillar. And I've got the same problem at the back, but I'm going to approach it from a different technique. Notice how the window is kind of wavy and the curves look absolutely bizarre. So when it was with the front windshield, because the front windshield and the side windows are so close together, I didn't want to alter the body because I might have altered it to fix the front windshield, but it might have ruined the side windows. But with the rear window here, it's far enough away from the other features that I decided that it would just be easier for me to go back and alter the body. I knew I was going to have to do this anyway because they weren't perfectly straight. And when you kind of have a feature like the window on the back, it really highlights where the problems are in your kind of CAD model. So what I'm doing is I'm going to modify this surface and keep coming back and forth to it. Finish form. There we go. So yeah, modifying this body so I can then look back at it from the kind of this point of view and see what I've changed. And by smoothing the surface in this method, I can kind of accurately control how the window is projected onto the body. So those wavy lines that I've just briefly highlighted over, I can get rid of them all by changing the body and not changing the sketch. I could change the sketch. If I drew the sketch from the top down, I might not get this problem, but it might look peculiar from the kind of rear view. So the easiest way is to simply modify the body. And so what I'm doing is just kind of looking at it from many angles, just helping me kind of process the information of what points do I need to move in order to fix this problem. So trying to identify what I'm about to do. So that corner looks a bit high and it looks a bit too wide. So now I can go back in, edit, and that'll be the starting point, I guess. So I want to bring that point in a bit, making sure to select the modify tool. Raise it up. So my kind of golden rule for when smoothing out these surfaces is if curves look fluid from two perpendicular planes, then they should look fluid from any angle. That's not necessarily always the case, but usually, so for example, this curve that I was just checking, from this side it looked quite fluid, but if from the top down the view, the curve isn't correct, then from almost every 3D kind of view that you're looking at it from, it will look like off, like out of place. But if you manage to get your curve to look fluid from both this top-down view and a side view, or a top-down view and a front view, your model will look a lot smoother, a lot cleaner. The lines won't look saggy; they'll look like they're under tension, which is what you want. I mean, the best way to guarantee that a curve is, or a line is going to look, well, specifically a curve is going to look good from any angle, is you just have to make sure that it is a smooth curve from both the front plane, the right plane, and the top plane. If a line is smooth in all those directions, then from whatever angle you view it, it should look like perfect. So here you can see the grid it kind of sags in the middle a bit, and really I want the curves to be nice and fluid. So I have to just go back and forth, checking that the curve is looking good. So there we go, finish form to have a look at what's changed. So it looks a lot better already. That rear line is a lot smoother. Still not perfect, but I'm a lot happier, and I just want to get to a point where I can finish off all the features and then go around it and modify it all at the end to get it right up to spec. So here, just having a quick look at quick view around the car to make sure everything's looking good, and I'm really kind of satisfied at this point. Like, I could just stop here, but I want to kind of finish it. I've come this far, so this is those sections there where I was just hovering over. That's what I want to change now, because the window doesn't curve like that from a top view. It looks straight. So by raising this point here and the points around it, that will reduce the curvature. And it might not be obvious at first how kind of when going back and editing a body might edit a sketch, but after you've done it a couple of times, even just for kind of 10 minutes or so, you'll start to get a good idea of how to alter your this kind of form in order to fix the kind of, well, if you have a window problem or any kind of feature problem. So yeah, you'll just get a good idea of how these slight changes will affect the rest of the model. So that already looks a lot more fluid. Not perfect. In the center it looks a little bit like it needs yeah, dipping a little, just to straighten or reduce kind of the sagginess in those lines. So there we go. And yeah, really kind of pleased with how that those grid lines look. So decided to finish form. It's taken a little while to process, but there we go. And that is at a point where I feel like I can leave it and come back right at the end. So that's it for this video. I hope to get on to the next one a bit sooner. Anyway, thanks for watching.